Well, good morning, everyone. So nice to see so many of you here early on a Friday morning. Of course, our special guest is Erik Prince, and we will be talking with him about his book, Civilian Warriors, but we will also budget some time for your questions at the end of our interview. So I would encourage you, as you're listening to the interview, to jot down some questions, perhaps, that you might have for Erik toward the end of the program. So with that said, Erik, welcome.
Thank you.
And let's get started. I want to talk to you a little bit about your father. You, as you say in the book, you are your father's son. He was a tremendous influence on you, personally and professionally, wasn't he?
He really was. He was, I think, an example of a great American success story. You know, his dad died when my dad was only 13, and he, I guess, became the man of the family at that age. I remember him having to install, he told me he had to install the hot water heater by himself, and he would cut a length of pipe, he would measure it, take it to the hardware store, they would thread it for him, he'd go back and install one piece at a time. I can't imagine my 13 or 14-year-old son tackling that project now, but he was working 40 hours a week in high school already, put himself through college, and supported the rest of his family, and then, you know, after a brief stint in the Air Force, he worked for a company that made die-cast machines. It was sold, and he didn't like the new management, so he took 5 other guys and remortgaged his house with 3 kids in his mid-30s and started again. And so, you know, that whatever risks I've taken, when you risk being able to feed your family to pursue a business goal, that takes real guts.
Yeah, yeah. What were some of the principles that you learned from him?
He really valued his employees. It was a big team. He compensated them well. You know, he actually, as the company grew, he wanted everybody to get back in time for dinner with their families. It was very important to him, and he actually ended up getting a small fleet of aircraft so that the sales engineers and salesmen could get out to the various automotive customers, make their pitches, and get back in time to see their families, because he knew how important that was.
Yeah. You became a Navy SEAL in the early 90s. What was it about that experience that got you thinking about starting a company like a Blackwater?
You know, I never, my plan was never really to be a defense contractor. I'd planned to be a SEAL for probably 10 to 12 years, which are really the best years to be a SEAL, because that's when you can be operational before you have to sit behind a desk. And, but he died very unexpectedly. And my wife got sick with cancer, and I got out, and really the SEAL teams have been using those kind of facilities since the 1970s, and no one had ever done it on an industrial scale, ever really big enough, safe enough, and well done. So as a way to stay connected to the teams, to serve that part of the community, I built Blackwater.
Yeah. And it started really as a training facility. It wasn't so much the security piece until much later,
right? Security came much later. You know, we started as a place for units to practice their small unit tactics and small arms, officer survival training for police officers. And then Columbine happened. You know, a terrible attack, 2 active shooters in a high school trying to kill as many people as they can. And, you know, that was a time of kind of surround and negotiate for SWAT teams then. And we built a mock high school after that to train units how to do that better. And then when the USS Cole was blown up, the Navy came to us, since we had instructors and ranges. And you know, even when we started, the 7 ranges on 3,000 acres was still the largest private training facility in the country. And we were ready. And we ended up training tens of thousands of sailors to protect their ship. And it wasn't really until 9/11 when a lot of those same government customers that had been coming to us for training asked us to come overseas and help in new ways.
How were you able to ramp up to that degree, Erik? Because it's more than a notion, I would think, to have that many feet on the ground in these various places. And it sounds like throughout the book you were able to ramp up quickly in all of these situations. How did you do that?
You know, our management team came from the special operations world. So they were SEALs or SF or Marine Recon or SWAT team kind of people. And a lot of them had done a stint in corporate America and gotten their MBAs. So we kind of took the best of both worlds in really a can-do mentality that pervades in the SEAL teams. And I guess in an early attempt of social media, we had the president, Gary Jackson, put together something called the Blackwater Tactical Weekly, which was a weekly free newsletter that we sent out, and it kind of became an affinity group, and it would talk about gear and tactics and lessons learned for the police counterterrorism world. And as that grew, Eventually, at its peak, it was reaching 250 to 300,000 people a week. But as we had additional work that came in, it was an immediate way to communicate, to broadcast those job offerings, and we never missed a beat then.
So 9/11 happens, and that's when things really begin to change for Blackwater.
Yes, I mean certainly the work started to accelerate by 2002, and we were called into the security business. We entered the aviation business. I'd been flying planes since I was a little kid. First on those ones that belonged to my dad's company, and then I learned to fly when I was in high school. And there's a reason the Marine Corps has its own air wing, and it's because it's very useful if you're operating in difficult places to have aircraft to move your people around, and that was our mentality, and we did it, and it worked.
At one point, you even bought a company to be able to have more aircraft.
Well, no, that was the company we bought, and we really bought them because they had the right licenses and the right people. Those were it came out of the 160th Special Operations Regiment, the Night Stalkers. If you've ever watched Black Hawk Down, those are the guys flying the helicopters. They're amazing aviators. They're really the helicopter equivalent of a SEAL.
Yeah. Erik, you and Blackwater took a lot of heat over those years for the number of government contracts that you received, some of them being no-bid contracts. What do you say to those who would question how Blackwater went about getting some of those big contracts?
Starting with, well, first of all, it's inaccurate that a lot of them were no bid. Some of them were, but in terms of total revenue, 95 to 97% of our revenue in the whole company was competitively bid. So in some cases, the government comes to you so urgently to say, we need you to do this right now. I need 20 guys here. Can you do it? And so you give them a price out of a government-approved pricing list, and you go that way. So there's some cases the government doesn't have time to bid it out. But we won business because we were ready and because we tried to anticipate what the next demand was going to be. Having a training facility certainly helped. We were the only ones really in that whole competitive space to build out a large facility that could host and train. And growing up, seeing my dad's business, having to, he served the big three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler. But then seeing the competitive push that came from the Japanese invasion, I guess that occurred in the 80s, with transplant car makers being much more competitive, it forced my dad's business to be better. And trying to figure out how to make even the deployment process. We kind of built, I read a lot on the Toyota production system, another book called The Goal by Ellie Goldratt about streamlining production, because the first thing I did when I got to the SEAL teams, beyond starting Blackwater, was took over the original business my dad started, which made die-cast machinery. And that was a nice business, but it had not had a whole lot of attention on it since the automotive business was so large. So I got some practical experience there at squeezing out some inefficiencies, and we really tried to apply that at Blackwater, and really built a linear process, almost like a linear Toyota flow of how do you recruit, vet, equip, train, deploy, and support people that you're going to put in difficult places. And because we could be the low-cost vendor, because we'd integrated all those steps and really squeezed out a lot of the waste.
Yeah. You essentially made yourself indispensable.
Well, there's another thing I looked at in business. There's three ways that my dad taught me, or maybe I read it in a book, that three ways to approach business. One is product innovation, right? That's the Mac or the Apple approach. Make the next product that somebody just has to have. And my dad did that with some of the automotive products that they developed, whether it's the lighted sun visor, the garage door opener in your car, that came from my dad's old business. Two would be efficiency. You just grind out every bit of waste out of the process and you become the low-cost provider. That's kind of the Walmart model. And three is customer intimacy, where you become so ingrained and indispensable to your customer that it's hard for them to get rid of you. And it almost be like the UPS model, where they're handling all your warranty returns, all your logistics flow for your production. That matters. So I guess Blackwater, we tried to wring out the inefficiencies and really become indispensable to our customer.
Yeah. I want to talk with you about innovation in just a moment, but I do want to ask you a little bit more about the efficiency piece of it, and being a low-cost provider. And this I'm taking right from your book. So you write that in 2001, Blackwater...
Tonight's